that was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed.
The very concept of what constitutes a Drag Race villain has evolved over the past 2 decades. There's villains who were loved by the fans, hated by the fans, those that added fun to the season, those that absorbed the energy in the room. But recently, we got a queen whose villainous self had a uniqueness about it that separated her from the other villains we've come to see before her. So today, we're gonna be exploring the story arc of Arietty, who, even though she just made her Drag Race debut in 2025, she quickly became a very polarizing contestant both on and off the show. Arietty's villain arc is significant because there was close to no positive moments that allowed us to see the humanity within her. And when there was, it was quickly overshadowed by her doing or saying something really negative that would just cancel out the positive side we got. When I think of other severe villain edits like Fifi O'Hara, aka Jeremy Carey on season 4 and All Stars 2,
go back to Party City where you belong,
or Raja O'Hara on season 11,
I'm not gagging. I mean, I'm gagging from like the smell.
While yes, they had pretty negative showings, there was still a lot more depth we got out of it. So then what makes Arietty so different? Well, in order to properly understand, we have to go back to the beginning. With that, let's take a moment to hear a message from today's sponsor.
So lately, I've been thinking about how much time we spend online and how important it is to actually own a little piece of it. Whether it's for your art, your work, your brand, or just a place to collect everything you're doing, having your own website changes the game. And that's why I'm happy to say that this video is sponsored by Squarespace, a great supporter of this channel. I've used Squarespace to build my own website, and the process genuinely surprised me with how straightforward it was. Their templates look clean and modern right off the gate. Editing them is honestly kind of fun. It's drag and drop and super visual. No coding, no weird backend setup, just you and your ideas coming to life. What's more is everything you need is built in, from custom domains and SEO tools to full-on e-commerce and payment. It's all there in one spot. You can even check your site traffic and sales with their analytics dashboard, which I love. It keeps things simple but smart. If you've been thinking about starting a site or even just centralizing everything you're already doing, now's a good time. You can start with a free trial by clicking the link in the description and getting an additional 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain, plus supporting my channel in the process.
Now, let's begin. When the promo content for season 17 was released, we got our first glimpse at Arietty. She was clearly gonna be one of the mugs of the season, with very elaborate creative costumes. The question was whether this would translate into the competition. When she started off her season 17 run, she was mostly doing a good job in terms of what she was showcasing. She was keeping up with the other queens and not letting their personalities overtake hers. Plus, she was clearly talented when it came to runway aesthetics and design/sewing challenges. It was only once it became clear that she wasn't good at literally any other part of the competition that her time started to feel like it was counted. What we didn't know at the time was that rumors had been circulating that many of the queens from Arietty's hometown didn't like her. Apparently, they were even excited when she got cast on Drag Race because it meant that they wouldn't have to be working with her while she was away touring. Arietty was eventually asked about these rumors during an interview with Joseph Shepard. The link will be in the description. She responded by saying that those rumors were probably true because according to her, those queens just never liked her to begin with and were simply jealous of her, adding that, quote, jealousy is a disease. Regardless, Arietty had finally made it onto Drag Race, so her focus now was on trying to do well in the competition. On episode 1, Arietty is the 5th queen to walk into the workroom. She provides us with a pretty straightforward introduction. It's clear that she's a young queen/twink with a drag style that tiptoed on the alternative side and positioned herself as someone that is aiming to be one of the look queens of the season. Although little did she know, this cast was largely going to be comprised of twinks, so she was gonna have to work a little harder to stand out. Now, Arietty is from Seattle, Washington, and her drag mother is Irene the Alien, who was the first queen eliminated from season 15. So in terms of living up to the legacy of her family, all Arietty needed to do was make it past the first episode. So one of the early storylines that we get from Arietty is her friendship with Lingerie. Based on the context clues of their conversation, it seems that they knew each other through social media prior to getting cast together. So they leaned on that to form a quick alliance between each other. And given that the premiere involved the Rate a Queen system where each group would rank each other, Arietty and Lana would use their friendship to their advantage. But we'll dive deeper into that in just a second. The setup for the first 2 episodes of season 17 is a double premiere, where half the cast performs on their respective week, each of them getting a turn to use the Rate a Queen system to rank the performances. And the lowest placing queens will have to lip sync for their life to find out who will be getting eliminated first. Arietty's talent show was a cultural performance representing her Mexican background. Unfortunately, while it was cute, it was an entirely one-note performance that had no clear peaks or valleys, along with the skills not being all that refined, with it coming across as a much more amateur performance than she was probably intending. Perhaps she could have been able to elevate this had she been able to add just one more element to it. Regardless, she would end up being placed safe for this. And since Arietty performed on episode 1, it would mean that next week she would be able to watch the other half of the cast perform and rank them herself. So the power would now be in her hands. The very next week, as the queens are getting ready to head out into the main stage, we get this odd moment between Arietty and Lucky Stars, with both of them flirting with each other. And Lucky even calls their chemistry the quote artsy fartsy spark.
I feel like, you know what, there's definitely a spark here. I call it the artsy fartsy spark.
It was a side storyline that never went anywhere. Well, probably because Lucky went home first. By the end of the episode, the bottom 2 is a lip sync between Hormona Lisa and Acacia Forgot, and Hormona becomes the first queen eliminated of the season. Well, only for like a second, because she gets a chance to try to pick the right lever of the Badunkadunk tank, and lucky for her, she gets it right and is able to stay in the competition. Meaning that the whole cast gets to move on to the next week, and the official pork chop of the season is still up for grabs. As soon as the queens walk into the workroom to discuss the results of the talent show, Arietty wasn't shy to throw a little shady remark, expressing how annoyed she was that Hormona was able to stay. So as soon as Hormona says she's grateful that she's getting a second chance, Arietty quickly replies that, quote, she doubts Hormona will be getting a third one. It was one of the first signs we see that Arietty is the type of personality that doesn't need to get comfortable to express an unwarranted opinion, even if it's super shady. From a TV perspective, it added good spiciness to the scene, because you could also tell that a lot of the other queens were bothered by Hormona getting the stay. So to transform that tension into a conversation made it more exciting. That being said, this was a pretty tame one-sided moment compared to the more chaotic conflicts we'd see down the line. The first true competitive challenge happens on episode 3 with the Monopulant Sewing/Design Challenge. This is a good position for Arietty given that she's a very talented seamstress. Plus, it's fun to see her work process when she gets to be within her element, because you can tell how confident she becomes, along with the demeanor being so carefree while in the workroom. She even tries to help Lucky Stars improve her outfit, but it's to no avail. In the middle of all this, Rue drops off the official results from the Rate a Queen talent show, so everyone can see the truth of how all the contestants voted. When we look at the results, we see that both Lana and Arietty stayed true to their alliance, Lana having voted Arietty number 1 and Arietty voting Lana number 1 too. Clearly, this benefited Arietty a lot more since she was on the hot seat. The confirmation that these two queens actually did have each other's back is actually a really cute moment. At the same time, this is also when we start to get small foreshadowing of the conflict between Arietty and Anya Nerve, with Anya making sure to jump in to comment about Arietty's talent show being one note, and just overall not being afraid to stand by her decision of ranking Arietty like that. This would turn into the start of a tumultuous relationship between the two. Another heartwarming bond that gets formed is Arietty and Jules, who we get to see interact while they're working together on their outfit. And it's clear that they do have this blossoming friendship, but it's a friendship that would quickly blow up in flames in the subsequent weeks. The runway theme for this episode is Monopulence, which is the look they had to make for the challenge. Arietty shows up in this gorgeous red gown that looks so detailed that if you didn't know any better, you'd think she brought it straight from a professional designer. Even the wig was a serve. It had this elevation that you usually expect from all-stars, let alone from someone's first time around. This leads Arietty to being in the top 3 for the episode, but she would end up losing the challenge to Sam Starr. But in her defense, it was a pretty 50-50 split between them because they both did such a good job with their outfits. Let me know in the comments if you're a team blue dress from Sam Starr or if you're a team red dress from Arietty. Once we get to episode 4, the queens walk back into the workroom after Lucky Stars becomes the first queen to be eliminated. Arietty is sad because that was one of her friends. This, topped with the fact that she was so close to winning a challenge, would end up giving rise to glimpses of the villain that we would soon get to know. Once the queens all gather in the couch to talk, Arietty is very clearly bothered, giving a very low effort congratulations to Sam Starr, and in her confessional proceeds to say that Sam Starr won by wearing a super ugly pussycat wig that was not glamorous at all. It was clear that Arietty was gonna be a chaotic queen of the season, and from a viewer's perspective, it was exciting. For the challenge, she gets paired with Jules Sparkles to play a music video inspired by famous Untucked speeches / fights. They get assigned back roles the moment in season 5 when Alyssa Edwards and Jade Jolie argue with each other, until Jade ultimately comments on Alyssa's back rolls. Jules decides to play Alyssa, while Arietty plays Jade. Unfortunately, Jules would completely steamroll Arietty, stealing the scene and adding the sense of charisma that was missing in Arietty's performance. On the main stage, Arietty ends up being told by the judges that she was outshined by Jules, a brutal reality check for Arietty, who up until that point thought that she was doing as best as she could, while at the same time it planted a seed that would soon start to grow to be resentment for Jules Sparkles. Because of the negative reception, Arietty is subsequently in the bottom 3, but is saved from having to lip sync for her life. On episode 5, after all the queens gather in the couch to discuss Joella's elimination, Arietty is quick to voice her opinion that she was surprised to hear such negative critiques from the judges, and that she doesn't think she was deserving of being in the bottom 3. She was fuming and super angry to the point that she was having a hard time being able to speak coherently. You can really start to tell here that she's starting to catastrophize in her head and feeling the adrenaline of being in the competition. Even with her saying in one of the confessionals that the competitive paws have now come out, which is an interesting moment from an outside perspective, because at this point, the fight or flight response has entered Arietty's body, and she locks in to be as vicious as she can to get that crown. There would be no turning back now. The next morning, Arietty decides to play into the idea of her being the villain of the season by entering the workroom out of drag with 2 black horns, and straight up saying in her confessional that she chose to wear those horns because she wanted to feel her villainous side. It was clear that she was ready to do what needed to be done to provide good TV, and wasn't afraid to be seen as a villain because of it. This to me, upon rewatch, confirmed that the actions we'd see from her in the remainder of the competition would be very intentional in causing chaos. The challenge this week is the RDR Live Challenge, an acting challenge that is done in one take. Arietty goes into it with a very positive headspace. She wants to be able to prove she can rise to the occasion in a comedy challenge and not be afraid of goofing off. She gets the role of being this Neanderthal, and even though you can see that she's putting in so much effort to do a good job at the sketch, the way she comes across just isn't effective, with her acting being too forced. If anything, it was clear that she had potential to succeed, but just wasn't experienced enough to understand how to use her skills. Plus, it didn't help that she was standing next to Corey King. While in Untucked, Arietty is fuming yet again, and as soon as she's asked to share what she feels, she immediately says that she does not want to talk about it. The queens then start talking about her performance not having peaks and valleys when it came to her acting, which causes Arietty to blow up, saying that there's other queens that should have been in the bottom bottom over her. She's then asked to call them out, so she gets up from her seat and points at each queen, which included Corey King, Crystal Envy, and Hormona Lisa, even adding that she's surprised Hormona even made it to the top 3 for the week. But it doesn't end there. She jokes that there's people that came out on the runway in a potato sack, and then apologizes to Susie too, since she was clearly referring to her, adding that she looks like a crazy clown. Then the whole group gets into arguing about whether Susie's outfit was a good runway. After all of this boils down, there is a cute moment we get towards the end where Jules offers Arietty some emotional support, showing that despite all the ups and downs, Jules was still interested in showing support to her friend. Subsequently, by the end of the episode, Arietty would end up in the bottom 2 alongside Lydia B. Collins, and they lip sync to Boogie Wonderland. It is here that we would find out that not only was Arietty not good at acting, but she also wasn't good at lip syncing, with Lydia very easily winning the lip sync and Arietty getting eliminated. But wait, Rue, there's still one more lever left that could save her. And so, when Arietty picks the lever, she ends up picking the right one and gets to stay, proving to the world that you really can't get rid of evil that easily. When the queens all gather on the couch to discuss the non-elimination, Arietty says that she's always had a connection to the number 17, even having it tattooed on her skin, which I'm not entirely sure what she means because she didn't elaborate, but regardless, the challenge for this week is a ball, which means 3 looks total, 2 you brought from home and 1 you make in the workroom. This was essentially an opportunity for Arietty to bounce back from the rough couple weeks she just had. When they have the workroom walkthrough, RuPaul asks Arietty if she feels unjustly put in the bottom the week prior, to which Arietty says yes, because even though she failed, she at least tried really hard when other queens didn't try at all. And then she proceeds to straight up name Crystal Envy as one of the queens that should have been in the bottom 2 instead of her. This was very messy of her to do, but I loved it because it added more attention to the workroom. At the same time though, it also made Arietty look very immature, and as if she was unable to receive negative critiques of her own work, even when RuPaul is standing right in front of her. The next drama Arietty would be a part of was when she, alongside Anya Nerve, spray painted their own outfits on top of Lexi Love's look that she had left drying outside. This was an accident because they both believed that the giant tarp laid on the floor was meant to be for the queens to use, and not something that Lexi was planning on wearing on the runway. Basically, they thought what Lexi was gonna wear looked like garbage. Arietty is outside when Lexi finds out about it, and ends up admitting to her that she didn't realize it was from one of the contestants. They just thought it was some random tarp to protect the pavement. I will say that even though Arietty / Anya both did this, it was a lot easier for Arietty to admit to what happened sooner, considering she was outside and nobody else was around. But for Anya, Lexi came in shouting and crying that someone had destroyed her outfit. So you can see why she wasn't that quick to admit it to her in that moment. That being said, once the ball starts, Arietty does an excellent showcase with all 3 of her runways. The first look was the Bathing Beauty, where she came out as this avatar alien looking being, and yet another gaggy wig. The second runway was the Lionfish, a head to toe airbrushed look with ruffled organza flowing off her body, making it look like she was swimming in the water, which went on to be one of the best from the whole season. Her third look, the one she made, is a Jellyfish Warrior Eleganza, and is perfectly paired up with the other 2 looks. By the end of the episode, RuPaul names Arietty as the winner of the challenge, earning her a first challenge win, and redeeming herself from the week prior where she was almost eliminated. If you didn't know any better, you would think that this would be a pivotal moment for how her trajectory would progress moving forward. But it wasn't. When we get to the Snatch Game, this starts to be the moment where Arietty's trajectory on the season really starts to spiral. She chooses to do the character of Baby Cupid, where she will act like an obnoxious baby for every single one of her responses. Needless to say, it was a complete mess of a performance. By the end of the episode, she ends up in the bottom 3, but is saved from having to lip sync for her life, which comes as a shock to most of the audience and the queens in the room too. Regardless, she gets to live another day. On episode 8, we get to see a very small glimpse into the vulnerability of Arietty's past. While getting ready for the Rusical, Arietty talks about how she used to be a plus-sized kid and ended up developing bulimia / anorexia, causing her to lose weight at a rapid pace. pace. Eventually, once she started drag, that's when she was able to find control with her eating disorders and began loving herself to the point where she was no longer trying to starve herself. It was one of those moments where you're able to see one of the reasons why Arietty is so defensive. After all, we're all products of our environment, and how we react to challenges is what shapes us. In Arietty's case, she must have gotten dog walked by people for being gay and fat, to the point that eventually she had to learn how to defend herself. Only she boxed herself into being in a constant state of defensiveness. Plus, she goes on to do a pretty decent job at the Rusical, which is saying a lot because almost everyone this episode did great, leading Arietty to be placed as safe. After gathering on the couch, Arietty is upset that Sam Star won the Rusical challenge, even trying to shade her, but Sam quickly checks her. By this point, it was now the second time that Arietty was upset about Sam Star winning, and like the 50th time that she was upset about something in general. For episode 9, they had another design challenge with the Betsy Johnson Couture runway prompts. Arietty walks out in a sleek, put together look that once again is super polished with appliques and stoning everywhere. She ended up in the top 3 for the challenge, but would end up losing to Jules Sparkles. By the time we get to episode 10, we are at the villains roast, where the queens had to roast Candy Muse, Plain Jane, and Mistress Isabel Brooks. Jules Sparkles gets to decide the order in which the queens will do their sets, so she lets everyone voice their opinions first. Arietty says that roasts aren't her thing, so she'd like to go in the middle around the 4th one to go up. However, once Jules comes up with the plan, she announces that Anya Nerve will go first, and following her will be Arietty. Then 3rd is Jules, 4th is Lana, 5th is Sam, 6th is Lydia, 7th is Susie, and 8th is Lexi. This would result in Arietty feeling insulted because to her, Jules intentionally put herself after Arietty, expecting Arietty to flop so Jules would look even better by comparison. This is the moment where all hell breaks loose. During rehearsals, Arietty decides that since Jules played dirty, she'll steal some jokes from Jules' set so she can use them before it's Jules' time to perform. To make it worse, while they're getting ready for the runway, Arietty switches makeup stations so she doesn't have to sit next to her, even though Jules was telling Arietty that she wasn't trying to set her up. But Arietty ignores her and says that she doesn't believe her because in her eyes, the performance order clearly shows that Jules was hoping she'd flop so that she would come out looking stronger. Jules eventually apologizes to Arietty for setting up the order the way she did, and Arietty thanks her but says that she never would have done something like that to Jules. The conversation sort of just keeps going in circles from there. Once we get to the roast, we are subjected to one of the cringiest roasts in Drag Race history. The energy just wasn't here from the get-go, and the gag of her having stolen some of Jules's jokes didn't even help distract from how hard she was flopping. But at the same time, it was something that we hadn't really seen play out before, especially with a contestant stealing material from another. Overall, both her and Jules would end up doing bad in the challenge. In an interview Arietty did with Joseph Shepard about a month or 2 after season 17 had finished airing, Arietty doubled down on her decision to steal Jules's joke, adding that her goal at the moment wasn't to succeed in the challenge because she already had accepted that she would be in the bottom 2. So she wanted to make sure that she'd screw over Jules and drag her down into the bottom with her. Something that she gleefully looks back on, saying that she'd do it again in a heartbeat because she felt and continues to feel slighted by what Jules did with the lineup order. Once the queens go backstage for Untucked, Arietty continues the drama by complaining about Jules being shaded with how she decided the order and not being ashamed at all from having stolen some of the jokes, while also complaining that there is too many comedy challenges. And it's during all this that Anya Nerve ends up checking her by saying that Arietty should have known what to expect coming into the competition. Arietty claps back at Anya to argue that Anya shouldn't be inserting herself into drama that has nothing to do with her because it's between her and Jules. To which Anya once again calls out by saying that Arietty abandoned her quote friend Jules. In the words workroom by literally abandoning her makeup station, which is why Jules would end up joining Anya to do their makeup together instead. This confrontation in Untucked between the two and Anya's decision to chime in is probably a big reason why she'd end up doing what she did less than an hour after Untucked. This would all lead to Jules Sparkles and Arietty landing in the bottom two, with Arietty ultimately losing the lip sync and officially being eliminated from the season. Of course, she had to make sure that before she left to throw a match into the workroom, with her deciding that she would have her final part of her legacy on Drag Race be her shading another contestant that was still competing, when she wrote in the mirror message, quote, "As one smelly bitch to another, Anya, please brush your teeth." Her lipstick message directly called out Anya Nur for having bad breath, which was a condition that Anya had shared with the girls behind the scenes as something that she struggled with throughout her life. This was cutthroat, as it served simply to embarrass Anya in front of the viewers, given that now that it had been written on the mirror, it would form part of the Drag Race zeitgeist forever. When Joseph Shepard asked Arietty why she wrote that message, Arietty explained that there was a lot viewers didn't see after her elimination. According to her, after she sashayed away, she had a complete meltdown. She was crying on the floor, extremely upset, and apparently even throwing things around the room. That's why she looked like such a mess by the time she filmed her exit interview. Arietty said that she wrote the message because Anya had pissed her off during Untucked, claiming she was being, quote, rancid towards her. So she retaliated. She said that if someone comes for her, she has to come back even harder because, in her words, some people need to get slapped and put in their place.
Like, some people need to get slapped or put in their place. Like, what the fuck?
Do you feel like you should have been slapped after the mirror message and put in your place?
That being said, Arietty also claimed that the moment she got into the car and was going back to her hotel, she immediately realized she had made a mistake by writing it. She also revealed that she apologized to Anya several times after filming Rap, eventually seeing her again at the Lip Sync Lollapalooza and the finale nearly 8 months later. Arietty added that she didn't know that Anya had a medical condition at the time, and all of this information again came from the Joseph Shepard interview, which I'll link below, and I definitely recommend you give it a watch. This inability to properly represent herself after the season aired, or to recognize how much more damage she was doing to her own brand, was bewildering. It only made people even less interested in supporting her or giving her the opportunity to change their minds. Usually, when a queen gets an overwhelmingly negative edit, they become much more mindful of what they put out into the world afterwards in an effort to win some people over. That doesn't mean that they can't be themselves. If anything, the goal after your season airs is to let the fans see who you really are beyond what was shown on television. The problem was that in the months following season 17, the interviews Arietty gave only reinforced the idea that she was still the same person who thought it was appropriate to use a mirror message as a jab at another contestant. It's why a return to All Stars now wouldn't really make sense anytime soon. Arietty has said that she's currently attending therapy and working on herself. So if she's able to continue growing over the next few years, maybe we could see a genuine reinvention. Yet part of me feels like the moment she walks back into the workroom, she'll become the same Arietty we saw in season 17. And in a weird way, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because this opens up a much bigger debate. Yes, Arietty was incredibly rancid on her season, but she also gave some of the most memorable moments that people are still talking about today. At the same time, from a competition standpoint, Arietty wasn't particularly a strong contender across most of the challenges. She excelled heavily when it came to design, but struggled with almost everything else. However, I do want to give her credit beyond just her sewing abilities, because throughout the season, she consistently proved that she wasn't just fashionable. She had a clear artistic point of view, with strong execution, and knew exactly how to present her drag on the runway. Which, speaking of, let's just take a look at some of those runways. The very first runway theme is the Mask for Masked Singer, and Arietty walks out wearing this gorgeous tribal elf goddess inspired look with splashes of red blood throughout the garment. Her makeup ties the entire concept together, subtly altering her face from the mug we saw when she first entered the workroom. On episode 2, the runway theme is It Cake? And Arietty presents a time-traveling elf, continuing to build on the sort of fantasy aesthetic that would sort of become parallel with her drag. Episode 3, of course, we have the Monopulence look that we talked about earlier, which helped her get a spot in the top 3 for the challenge. Episode 4 4, the runway category is quilted for your pleasure. Arietty serves a black, white, and red quilted eleganza, combining latex with dramatic drapery. It was another standout look and showed just how consistently high her runway standard was week after week. Episode 5, the runway theme is tickled pink. She comes out in this extravagant vinyl look that completely covers her body. Episode 6, we have the ball. Of course, we have the first look, which is the bathing beauty, followed by the lionfish inspired presentation, and then finally we have the design portion where she created a jellyfish warrior eleganza. On episode 7, the runway category is nails. Arietty comes out as this fantastical futuristic cat creature, complete with 4 arms and covered in nails, each hand featuring a completely different nail design. No matter how badly she flopped the challenge, her runways were almost always on point. Episode 8, the runway category is parasol. Arietty wears a black crystal gown accented with a beautiful burgundy ruffle. Compared to some of the more elaborate looks she'd already presented, this was one that was a bit more subdued, but it was still polished and well executed. Episode 9, of course, is the Betsy Johnson Couture runway prompt, which we already discussed. And then episode 10, the runway category is short shorts. Arietty appears as this elven royal ready to play football, complete with another fantastic headpiece. Therefore, even if she does end up coming back for All-Stars anytime soon, while she will for sure be delivering in the looks, do you guys think she could surprise us and actually do a good job in other areas of the competition? Let me know in the comments, because I'm curious to hear what you think. Now, after season 17 was over and done with, All-Stars 10 began airing. Around that time, drama slowly started to build up involving Arietty and her drag mother, Irene the Alien, who was competing on All-Stars 10. It began when Irene unfollowed Arietty on social media and made comments at Roscoe's implying that she was no longer Arietty's drag mom. Things escalated when Mistress released a video leading up to the All-Stars 10 promo drop, interviewing several queens from the cast, including Irene the Alien. In the interview, Irene stated that she no longer considered herself Arietty's drag mother, saying that she felt wronged by her. This triggered a meltdown from Arietty on Twitter, where she began making serious accusations against Irene, including allegations that she alluded to her being attracted to minors. It was a series of tweets posted over the course of roughly 2 hours before she ultimately deleted most of them and released the following statement. It's important to note that this statement likely came from Arietty realizing the severity of the allegations she had made online and the potential legal consequences that could follow if Irene chose to pursue action. Because of that, it appears that this was more of a damage control response than something rooted in genuine reflection or accountability. Regardless, this statement reads as follows. Good evening. On Tuesday, despite my best efforts to remain composed and rise above gossip, I allowed a moment of anger and weakness override my better judgment. In an instinctive attempt to protect myself, I reacted to speculation that stemmed from comments made by Irene. I deeply regret responding impulsively and acknowledge that what I said, particularly the insinuations I made, caused harm. After a conversation with Irene herself, we decided a public statement was necessary. I want to take full responsibility for the language I used, including the words prepubescent and racist. While they were intended as exaggerations, I now understand that they were not only inappropriate, but also deeply hurtful and unnecessary. I am truly sorry for any pain or discomfort my words may have caused. I hope people can understand the very human instinct to defend yourself and perhaps even relate to the experience of making mistakes in emotionally charged moments. Many of you may remember a similar misstep I made during the roast. I had hoped I'd grown from that experience, but clearly I still have work to do. In this recent situation, I momentarily lost sight of that growth. I recognize I have a tendency to react emotionally, and I want to be able to be transparent in sharing that I am actively seeking support through talk therapy and anger management. I am committed to learning better tools for handling difficult situations with grace and care. To Irene the Alien and to the LGBTQIA community, I offer my sincere apologies. In a time when our community already faces immense external pressure and hostility, it's even more important that we show up for one another with respect and compassion. I take full accountability for my actions and I am committed to doing better. Thank you for reading and holding me accountable. Sincerely and with humility, Arietty. While this went on to be the end of the drama, it would essentially be the moment where Arietty truly messed up big time with not just the relationship between her and her drag mom, but also the fan base, who now had a real life example example of very poor behavior that paralleled what everyone had seen transpired on season 17. Throughout the next year, Arietty took a step back. She occasionally goes on social media to do some posts and tries to stay out of drama. Along with that, she's also appeared on more podcasts, but for the most part, it's been a pretty uphill battle for her to try to win back some of the respect from the fan base that she had damaged so severely. Now she's in a position where there's this large negative aura attached to her brand that's very hard to escape. All of this brings us to now. While Arietty may have made some mistakes, we can't deny that there is a lot of talent present within her drag. The question becomes, do you see Arietty being capable of maturing to the point that she could return to her screens as a changed person? Or are you someone that never particularly had any issue with the way Arietty conducted herself? And if so, would you be excited to see her return as the same exact person to be vicious yet again on another cast of queens? Let me know in the comments what you think, and make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time.
If you've been thinking about starting a site or even just centralizing everything you're already doing, now's a good time. You can start with a free trial by clicking the link in the description and getting an additional 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain, plus supporting my channel in the process. I take a moment to thank my patrons. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Matthew Burns, Gay Uncle, Saritish, Las Potitas, Cool Gal Nan, Jet Sam Adams, and Natasha De Leon. And in the Gay Squad, we have Lone Resident, Christine Gregory. And in the Green Squad, we have Cayman Rider Furry, Edgar Allan Pup, The Only Sean, IJS, Not a Punch But a Keek, Jack Beck, Galeria Gomez, Sarah G, Scarlet Rose, Boiled Peanut, Not an Omelet But an Egg, Max Whale, Dea, Dea, and Niall O'Hearn. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. I'll see you guys next time.